Welcome to the EZCODE Projects Series toaster video number 10. In this video, we'll review our code base and look for areas we can clean up and reduce. If you have not done so already, please complete the previous EZCODE Projects Toaster Series videos. Those of you that have done so may continue. Remember that all you have to do is type as I do. Just pause the video or slow down the speed when needed to catch up. Understanding comes later. Let's begin. Let's start by opening our code.js file in our toaster directory. So open up VS Code. I'm going to open up the Explorer, Open Folder, Projects, EZCODE, Toaster. That's the one we want. So now we have the source directory open here on the side. And I'm just going to close these out and just open the code.js. And I'm going to get rid of my menu for now. So here we go. Let's what can we see here? So now we're looking from different eyes, different perspective. There was enough here to say, let's get something working. That's a different set of eyes than let's clean up what we did. So getting it working is the first step. It always is the first step. The second step should be focused on shortening the code that's there, but also keeping it somewhat readable. So as we look through this, what can we see? So we want to approach also with a few fundamentals in programming or any programming language, which is the dry principle. And the dry principle is don't repeat yourself. So DRY. So let's keep this in mind, and also single responsibilities. So when we can, we could say, like the start method here has a single responsibility. It kicks off everything, doesn't have any extra things in here. Set header count is primarily just here to deal with setting the header count and so on. So let's go through the top here. So we have, what does limit mean here? It's pretty basic. I don't know what it's limiting. I just know it says limit 3. It may make sense if I go down to the code, but this is what we're talking about. If anyone just came in here today and they're like, what's being limited? So that's something we can look at. We access the toasters element. Okay, so that's the next piece here. What does set header count do? So we're looking here. Something with the toasters count, maybe. It's not, I can see that inside here, but could this be renamed? Set toaster count, maybe? This is how we're thinking. So as we go down, and then we're looking orders, listen, chunk. Could that be named better? I mean, we know we're chunking up the array, but is that really what we want to have here when we read it? And then we pass in orders to the toasters. Let's see. Toasters, toast orders. Okay. What about the initialize function? Let's see. What are we looking at here? We see orders being passed in. Okay, that's this one. That's the one we're looking at here. What about the, let's see, we see the creation of each toaster. Okay, and that's here. And then we see orders being passed in. Okay, that's these orders right here that's being passed in. And then we see the creation of each toaster. We see an add event listener. Yeah. To the toaster. All of this has to do with the toaster. So can't we add the event listener, except this one here? Can't we add that directly in the toaster class? Just asking questions, not trying to solve anything right now. Perhaps that's possible. So let's just keep going, and we can see there is a lot going on in the code.js file. Right, so there is a lot going on here, that's for sure. What should go in here? What should go in this file? It's really a control file to kick things off. So it kind of is like a load file, but now we change that to a start-stop file or start-stop function. So it should just join the orders to the toasters, really, because I mean, this is what we're just using it as the fundamental access point for kicking things off between the orders and the toasters. So let's get some more practice creating a new file and importing it for use and create a new toasters.js file. As we can see, we do have orders and we have a toaster itself, but we need a file that is about all the toasters at once. So let's see what we can do here. Plus, this is great practice over and over again. If you haven't done this already, I mean, you have done it if you've gotten this far in the series, but in all our series, a lot of times we'll create a new file. So to do that, it's as easy as right-clicking over here, adding new file, and then the name of the file with the extension. In this case, it's a JavaScript file. Oops, I forgot the S. So that's toasters.js. And a lot of times in programming, you're going to deal with things that are plural and things that are singular. So we use this very often where we might say toasters and then there's a toaster. Or there's a users and then there's a user. And then there's applications and then there's an application. So we deal with large collections like these. So there we go. We have a toasters.js file. Okay, well that's cool. And so just remember, the name might be different here. We're doing toasters.js, but the procedure is the same. So just try to memorize what we're doing here. So the more you can do this, the better off you are. So commit it to memory. We create a file. Now that's there. What's the next thing we need to do when we're talking about JavaScript, HTML, and CSS? We need to load that file somehow. And the only way to load that is to do it via the view HTML file. This is the file that gets loaded, the primary file that gets loaded by the browser. So we're going to go in here and we're going to do as we do, and we're going to add a file. I'm going to add it right above toasters. So I have two toaster.js, and then all I have to do is add the S there, and now we have toasters and then toaster. So let's see, that should be good wherever we put it there, but I'm just putting it above just to make sure in case we need to have some weird loading issue. And we're going to go ahead and save this. And now we'll add in our boilerplate so that our new file actually produces a usable object. So remember, just like in orders.js file or the code.js file, we need to create an IIFE, an immediately invoked function expression, and assign its value to a constant that will be available for our view HTML when it's loaded in the browser. Thanks to our script tag we just added right now. All right, so let's go over the IIFE. Let's look at what that is. So let's just go over to the toaster.js file and we're going to type it out. So what's a function? I mean, that's it. That's as simple as it gets right there, except for we need to add the name. And in this case, we're going to call it, I mean, really, you can get away with JavaScript no name. There's no name functions all the time. It's wanting to have a name because of the highlighter that has there, but really, let's see actually what error it is. Identifier expected. You know, this is perfectly fine in JavaScript, and I just want to show that off here. But now to make an IIFE, we got to take that function. Actually, let's get rid of the space there. And put it in parentheses. Now you see our error went away. Now we have a function declaration inside of parentheses. And what happens when we put things in parentheses is it says run this first. So it's going to run this, and then it's just going to be what's called an anonymous function. The most important part of the IIFE is right here. Are you ready for the magic? This is a function. It gets invoked, but just like if we created a function, let's see down here, I put that there and we did our normal curly braces and I said console.log hello. And then we ran this file. How would I call this in the browser? There's no name here. There's no way to call this. And that brings us back to the IIFE. So here I want the definition to be run first. And then once it's run, I want to invoke it. And we invoke methods or functions this way by putting two parentheses at the end. This is how we call a described function or a defined function. This is the IIFE right here. This is the magic that's happening. Now, how is that meaningful to us? It's because this will immediately return whatever we put in here. So if we don't put a return statement, if you remember from a couple of videos ago, then what are we going to return from this IIFE? Undefined, which is fine. But most of the time we want to return something. If not, then we just want some code to run. So whatever we return here is going to be returned to the right here in the beginning. And that's why we say const. And in this case, it's going to be toasters equals And that's why we say this is going to run whatever's in here. And if I put a console log in here, as soon as the view HTML loads this, that console log is going to fire and this function is going to run. So it's an immediately invoked function expression. And it's an expression because of the parentheses around it that are calling it right here. Now, what we can do also is we can add things in here. So let's say I wanted to say I want 1 here, and I want 2 here, and I want 5 here. Well, that means 3 arguments get passed into the IFE. So this would be, let's just call it name. Let's call this value and extension. That's just what we call them. But these will represent that. So name would be 1 string, value would be 2 string, and extension would be 5. I just want to show that we can pass things in this way. We're not going to do that. And there we go. So we have built our IFE. We have our module ready to go. And now just open the function to make sure we have room. I've already done that. I'm going to just put that on line like here to keep these together. Let's save our work. And we're going to move to the code.js file. Okay, let's go over there. So to get to the heart of what we need to change, let's first focus on what we want in the end. So the code.js file start function, let's go there, yeah, is going to be the place where we start any code for our application, all right? Well, this is not going to be any logic. Let's see, there's not going to be any logic not related to that, okay? So if we look at the start function, what do we really want here now that we have the toasters.js? So we can see that the orders come in and are immediately sliced up. Right, yeah, that's what happens. We should probably do the slice up in the toasters.js file and let that logic initialize each toaster, because toasters knows about a toaster, where code.js is just like a boot file. It's just a code file to boot things up. So maybe it shouldn't know about that. That's the separation of concerns. So let's see. Let's imagine for a moment that we just want to pass orders into the toasters.js file. What would that look like? And this is why it's so important to just practice. When you have an idea, type out how you want to read the idea, how it's going to come out to begin with, before you even make anything. So of course, toasters.js has nothing in it, but let's pretend it does. So we know we have this. So we can go in here and say toasters, and then let's just say process, and let's just pass in orders. So that's pretty terse, right? That says toasters process orders. You can read what's going on. You don't have to know the nitty-gritty of everything inside of the machine. That's the command to kick it all off. Toasters process orders. So I like that. So sure, we don't have any logic for that yet, but by first thinking of where we want to go, how we want to read it, we can then know what to make. So looking at that, I can already tell you we're going to need a process function that takes orders. So it's pretty simple what we did, and will result in moving almost the entire remaining logic to our toasters.js file. To make this easy on us and to reduce mistakes, copy everything in this file inside of the EZCODE IFE and paste it into the toasters.js file. So we'll leave our command here for now, and I'm just going to go, we're going to find that curly brace. We're going to go down here, and we want to return, let's just return everything in here. I'm sorry, copy it, and I'm just going to save that quick too. And let's move over to toasters, and we're going to put it inside of this thing here. So now we have the entire code.js in here, and we can manipulate what we want, and we still have our backup copy of code.js in case we need it. So now that we started with the curly braces there, pasted into the toaster, we did that. Now let's go back to the code.js file. Okay, so let's save this quick, and we'll go to the code.js file. And first, delete everything in the start function, leaving only the new line recreated. Okay, this always feels good, honestly, too, deleting stuff. So let's just go in here. Let's see if my keyboard wants to work out. It doesn't want to work right now. There it goes. And there we go. That's great. Look at how easy that was. Okay, So delete everything except for the start button. So we're also going to do, let's start going more here. Now we're going to go, keep going down here. Remember we said everything but the iffy. So the, let's see, we're going to keep probably the return statement for now. So let's hold on to that for a minute. But the stop, let's see, is that still here? Start and stop. Let's just get rid of everything for now, because that's what my notes said. And let's get rid of this here. Okay, so we don't have much in here anymore. Let me just check real quick to make sure that's correct. We did need to leave actually the start and stop. So let me go back here. I'm just going to pop mine back in. Where's my stop? There's the stop. Okay, so I'm just going to go up here like this. You can always Command Z your way back in if you already deleted everything. And let's see. And we're going to go keep it like this. There we go. We got our start. We got our stop still. Everything's here like it should be. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this file. And again, if you were in there and you're editing, I have undo, Command Z. I think it's Control Z, Control Shift Z or something on Windows. I'm not sure. Now that we have that, we have to go into our toaster.js file now. So it may seem like we just duplicated the code.js file, and perhaps it looks a bit redundant, but when creating applications, it's very important to always try to separate concerns as much as possible. That may not happen when you're first initially building something, but you'll see it'll start to become complex and the code it'll be coupled too tightly, and we need to separate that so it's easier to maintain and read and troubleshoot. So eventually our application will grow over time. And the more our logic is separate and isolated, we can easily make changes within a file and know that we are not breaking the orders or the loading system. For example, if we made changes to the toaster or the toaster files. So we also get another advantage in that when we are in the toasters.js file, we know we are just talking about things related to toasters, the plural toasters, that is. So anything not related to toasters should be moved to either our toaster class or orders class or orders service. So let's start at the top. Okay, so again, we see limit, which is how many orders should be given to each toaster. Okay, having limit in this file still makes sense, as the orders should not know how many orders should go into each toaster. The toasters file should know that. So let's just rename it a bit, because it does need a little bit more explaining as to what it does. So I'm just going to go here real quick and just going to look real quick to see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 5 here. So there's 5 occurrences of it that we're going to have to change. And here's something just in case you want to see it in VS Code. I can click this arrow down and it says limit, and I can say replace. So what do we want to replace it with? So in this case, we'll go ahead and use this, and we'll call it orders per toaster. Okay, and we're just going to go over here and we can do it one at a time or replace all. I like to do one at a time because I can see which one I'm replacing. Okay, now there's no more left. I'm going to go to the top, and that was changed too. I'm going to delete this. Sometimes I make keyboard mistakes and it changes things. So orders per toaster. Now we've changed that. If you haven't done the finding on that, please do that now. Orders per toaster, and there was 4 occurrences down here on these lines, 5 including the top piece. So make sure that that is changed right now. Let me get rid of our Explorer over there, give you some room to look at it. Okay, so what else are we doing here? Orders per toaster. We changed that. We changed it in the method. If we keep moving down the file, we can see that it all has to do with toasters. So let's keep everything down to the start function for now. The start function, if you recall, is from our copy paste. Also remember that we made up a new method in our start function named process. Let's change the name of this function to process. Okay, so that's not start anymore. That is, oh, my caps lock is on. Well, let's see. We want to go to line 15, and we want to go to the start, and this is going to be called process. Okay, that's called process now. That's fine. I'm going to get rid of this line because that's actually in our start menu. And then we also need to pass in orders. Okay. Now I can already see there's going to be a name collision here with this one. So let's just keep that in mind. So we're getting passed in this right here. So this is now going to become the lowercase orders. And mind what's going on here. There we go. So that's going to be the big case orders, but we're passing it in. It's going to be here, so you can still call listen. This is going to be something else. So let's just name this batch, and we'll name this batch. This is always an issue with programming, is coming up with words to describe very similar things, especially when we're just changing them a little bit. So orders, listen, we're getting a batch of orders, so that makes sense. And then for each batch, for each order, let's move this up, because once we chunk it, it's more of a group, and that's okay. We know it's orders, so let's just call that group. So again, here's the whole function. So we have to say this is the input, this is us using it inside the function. These have to match. So chunk batch for each of the chunk. They're going to be group. Make sure you have these changes there. I'm just going to move mine over a little bit, get rid of that line there. Now, let's see where we're at here. Orders, explain. Okay, so once again, I don't, we're being a little picky about this, but instead of chunk, let's change this up. Let's call this divide. Let's say we're going to divide the batch, and then for each group. So instead, we're going to say divide, which means we've got to look for the chunk, and there it is. There's only one of them down there. So we'll just go ahead and call this divide. Make sure you change the function chunk to divide, and we'll just do a safety save. Okay, so notice how our process method is slightly dimmed. So let's go back up there to our process. Yes, that's slightly dimmed. And you may be able to see its error if you hover over it. Let's see. The error is process is declared, but its value is never read. So that's a quick thing to think of. Whenever you see that type of error or it's grayed out like this, is because we're not doing anything with it. And so if we called it here in the file, then it wouldn't be that way. So what we need to do is we need to return it from our service, from our IFE. So at the bottom, just like we did in the other files, we're not going to do start and stop here. So I'm going to take those out. And we're just going to come in here and we're going to say process. Because remember, it's a key value. That's what these curly braces here are. It's just an object. There's no function in front of it. So it's just an object. That means it's key value. And that means this is really what we're doing. And so since the key is the same as the value, we're just going to shorten it and say this. So there we go. We have the process now should be not dimmed, and that's good. That looks good. So the error has gone away. Let's do a sanity check on our work so far. So let's save all our work and open the view HTML. So I'll go ahead. I'm going to make sure this is saved, but just in case you didn't before, the code.js and view HTML should be saved. And let's go to, I'm going to move mine around here. Open up the browser, and what do we always load? It's always the view HTML. Open file. Projects toaster source view HTML. There we go. And there we go. We have everything pretty much working. Just make sure how many console errors. We'll hit start to kick it off, and everything looks like it's working fine. I'm just going to hit stop again real quick. Now, we began our cleanup of our application code base. So adding another file seems to have reduced the overhead of the code.js file and added a bit more context to our logic. So now we're just going to review what we've done so far. So you remember we gutted this file. It's gone now. All we did is add the toaster process orders, and then we pumped everything into this file in the process. And you can see, as long as you made these changes correctly, and there's no misspellings, we didn't do too much, did we? And now toasters, we know this is talking about toasters. We know the code.js file is more of our bootstrap file. It kicks everything off. And then our view.html, we loaded our file. And everything seems to be working. Our start and stop worked. And then if we kick it off again, it still stays at 28 to start off. Our toasters start back up again, and we start counting from where we were. This is great. So in the next video, we'll complete our toaster-nator project series by finishing our toaster.js logic and some quick updates to our UI. And of course, as usual, we're going to add some mega bling. So if you enjoyed this video, click like and then subscribe buttons to get notifications of new content. Thank you for exploring programming with me, and I'll see you in the next video.